The boy stood backstage, his heart pounding like a drum, every breath heavy with both fear and hope. He thought about his journey, how he grew up in a small town in the Philippines where music was his only escape from the struggles of daily life. Nights without electricity were filled with him singing under the stars, his voice echoing in the quiet streets as neighbors paused to listen. His parents worked tirelessly, and though they had little, they always told him that dreams had no price. Now, standing on the grand stage of AGT 2025, he felt the weight of their sacrifices pressing on his shoulders. When his name was called, he stepped into the spotlight, the massive audience and bright lights nearly blinding him. For a moment, silence hung in the air, and the judge's eyes fixed on him with curiosity. He closed his eyes and let the first note slip out, soft but steady. The melody carried not just his voice but his soul, filled with raw emotions of longing, love, and hope. Each word felt like a story, and every note painted a memory of home. The audience leaned in, captivated, and slowly the expressions on the judges' faces shifted from curiosity to awe. Some had tears glistening in their eyes, others sat frozen, afraid to miss a single note. When he finished, the entire theater erupted in applause, a wave of sound that shook him to his core. For a few seconds, he stood frozen, overwhelmed, before bowing deeply. The moment felt like a dream, as if all the struggles, the sleepless nights, the hunger, the tears, all had led to this one performance. In that instant, he wasn't just a boy from the Philippines, he was a voice for every dreamer who dared to believe. As the lights dimmed and the stage filled with silence, the boy stood in the center, gripping the microphone as if it were the only thing keeping him steady. He looked out at the sea of faces, thousands of people watching, and for a moment his knees threatened to give way. But then he remembered the nights back home in the Philippines, when he would sing in small gatherings, his voice rising above the noise of jeepneys and street vendors. Those moments had taught him courage, and now he needed every bit of it. The first note that escaped his lips was fragile, almost like a whisper, but it carried something powerful, truth. As he continued, his voice grew stronger, soaring through the theater like a bird finally set free. Every lyric was drenched with sincerity, and the audience could feel it deep in their chests. Close-up shots revealed tears forming in the eyes of strangers who had never met him but felt as though they knew his heart through his song. The judges leaned forward, captivated, their expressions shifting with every note, first curiosity, then amazement, and finally pure admiration. The theater was no longer just a stage, it became a bridge between his small-town roots in the Philippines and the grand American spotlight. With each high note, he broke through invisible walls of doubt, proving to himself and to the world that his dream was real and deserved. By the time he finished, the final note lingering like a prayer, silence swept across the room for a heartbeat before the eruption of cheers shook the hall. People rose to their feet, clapping and shouting, some waving flags, others simply covering their mouths in disbelief. And in that powerful moment, the boy realized he had given more than a performance, he had shared his soul. The golden stage lights shone down on him, casting a glow that made the moment feel almost unreal. He stood still, microphone in hand, his chest rising and falling with the weight of every breath. The music began softly, and with it, he let his voice flow, gentle at first, then building with intensity like a wave gaining strength. His voice carried the story of his life, a mix of hardship, hope, and faith, and though the lyrics were familiar, the way he sang them made it feel as if the words had been written just for him. The audience grew quiet, their attention drawn in as if nothing else in the world mattered except the sound of his voice. The judges, who had seen countless performances, suddenly looked struck by something rare, authenticity. Each line of the song seemed to peel back a layer of his heart, revealing the raw emotions he had carried since childhood. He thought about the nights his family went hungry, the mornings when he sang to distract himself from the pain, and the times he dreamed of stages like this while standing barefoot in the dusty streets of his hometown. Now, all of those memories poured into his song, giving it a depth that left people trembling. As he reached the climax, his voice rose higher, ringing out with passion so strong that some in the crowd placed their hands on their hearts. Tears rolled down faces in the audience, and even the cameras caught one of the judges wiping their eyes. When the final note hung in the air, the silence that followed was electric, heavy with awe. Then the theater erupted in cheers, louder than thunder, echoing in his ears as he smiled through tears. In that single performance, he transformed struggle into triumph. The moment his final note faded into the silence of the grand hall, time seemed to stand still. The boy stood trembling under the spotlight, his eyes wide as he searched the faces of the judges, unsure of what would come next. For a few heartbeats, the room remained hushed, as if everyone was still caught in the spell of his voice. Then, the silence broke with an explosion of applause that rolled through the audience like a wave. People rose from their seats, clapping, cheering, some shouting his name while others wiped tears from their faces. The boy pressed his hand to his chest, overwhelmed, his body shaking with emotions too big to contain. One judge leaned forward, their voice breaking slightly as they said, "That was not just a performance. That was pure emotion, pure heart." Another nodded, calling it one of the most unforgettable moments in AGT history. But it was Simon Cowell's reaction that held the most weight. His expression softened, and for once, words seemed to escape him. Instead, his hand hovered over the golden buzzer, the iconic button that could change everything. The camera zoomed in as the boy covered his mouth in disbelief, his eyes filling with tears. The crowd screamed louder, chanting for the buzzer to be pressed, the entire theater vibrating with anticipation. And then, with a sudden strike, Simon's hand came down, slamming the golden buzzer. In an instant, gold confetti rained from the ceiling like a shower of dreams. The boy fell to his knees, crying openly as the judges stood in ovation, the audience roaring behind them. He raised his arms, touched by the golden rain, realizing this was not just a victory for him, it was a victory for every Filipino dreamer and a moment that united two worlds in celebration. As the golden confetti continued to rain down, the boy remained on his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. His tears mixed with laughter as he tried to take it all in, the cheers, the flashing lights, the sea of faces on their feet celebrating his triumph. For him, this was more than a performance, it was proof that dreams born in the smallest corners of the Philippines could shine on the biggest stage in America. The camera caught audience members waving both the Philippine and American flags, a powerful image of unity and pride. He looked toward the judges' panel, where Simon gave him a rare, warm smile and a nod that said everything words couldn't. The boy pressed his hands together in gratitude, bowing deeply to the audience and whispering, "Thank you," through sobs. The confetti sparkled around him like pieces of his dream finally taking shape. His parents' faces flashed in his mind, their sacrifices, their endless belief in him. For a moment, it felt as though the entire world was clapping not only for his talent but for his story, for every hardship he had endured, for every note he had sung under the night sky back home, for every time he refused to give up. The stage no longer felt intimidating, it felt like home, a place where he belonged. As the applause thundered on, the narrator's voice echoed in the background, reminding everyone that this wasn't just about winning a buzzer or a competition. This was about hope, about proving that no dream is too far, and that the courage of one young boy could inspire millions across two nations. And with his head held high under the golden rain, he embraced the victory, not just his, but a victory for every dreamer.